I have loved Star Wars for basically as long as I've been alive. I can tell you a lot of things I remember. Playing clone troopers on the playground in elementary school, the return of Darth Maul, my first time watching Revenge of the Sith, the Star Tours re-theme, and going to see all of the sequels in theaters. One thing I can't tell you is the first Star Wars movie I watched. The series played in my house so much that I probably wasn't conscious the first time I watched it. Your first Star Wars movie is a very important step into a larger world, but with the theatrical and numerical differences and all the other TV shows and spin-offs, people disagree on the best place to start. So, what's the best order to watch Star Wars? This video is going to contain spoilers for several pieces of Star Wars media. I'm going to try to be as subtle as I can, but some things just have to be stated. That being said, I'm going to put warnings with time skips, so if you want to watch Star Wars blind, you still get some of the thrills and are able to watch this video. There are 3 major ways people suggest watching the 11 theatrical films as a first-time viewer. Those are release order, timeline order, and machete cut, and each one has its own reasoning and story behind it. Timeline order allows you to watch the series as the epic saga George Lucas imagined them as, following the Skywalker family and their impact on the galaxy, while release order forces you to grapple the series as the fans originally came to them, making you imagine what happened before and after the rise and fall of a mid-rim emperor before those chapters were opened to us. And for those who want to watch an emotional roller coaster of a story you know will have a tragic end before its conclusion, machete order allows the highs and the depressing lows to be all the more impactful. I think all of these orders are great, but whether it's the right order for you to watch depends on your knowledge of the universe. If you're watching the series for the first time and have had little enough contact that all you know is what a lightsaber is and maybe one of these guys' names, I offer my alternative release order. A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Solo, and The Rise of Skywalker. This allows you to experience the films in a way that is similar to the fans, allowing the twist to still be surprising. I moved Rogue One before Episode 7 for 2 reasons. One was because 7 goes straight into 8, so it's best not to split the direct line of the sequels. 2 was because the jump between the end of 3 and the start of 7 is 50 years in the universe, and placing Rogue One between them breaks up that jump a little bit and allows you to reflect on the story of the original trilogy without having to go back and watch them all. Don't worry, you'll be back again. If you were going to take a break between films, I would do that between Rogue One and The Force Awakens, but I still suggest watching the sequels since they are mostly fun and many people's favorites. Also, they're important to watch because they are still part of the Skywalker saga. Think of it like you're meeting your partner's cousins. People will talk about them, so you should know who they are. Now, if you are familiar with major spoilers of the franchise, I would suggest watching the movies in the original machete order with a few changes. The original idea of machete order started before the sequels were released, so watch those at the end, using them as a showcase of the impact Vader and Luke had on the galaxy afterwards. As for the 2 Star Wars stories, I'm putting Rogue One as the first in the watch order because it's too far from the prequels to fit in after them, and I'd argue it sets the stakes for the Empire higher than A New Hope, really showing the reason why the rebellion is fighting. Also, Solo will go before 7, aligning with the themes of following the character's emotional journey rather than the timeline or release orders. Before we get into timeline order, there are a couple other watch orders I wanted to comment on. Alphabetically. While it does start and end with the correct films, I'm going to have to pass on this one. Way too back and forth to really get a grasp on any of the characters or overarching plot lines. Roman numerical alphabetically. No. Don't even try. I mean, it does keep 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8 together, but why am I even defending this? This is way too weird, even for me. Reverse timeline order. I mean, if you want, it just feels like you're trying to be contrarian at that point, so you do you, I guess. No order. This one I'm going to give a pass for, with the caveat of it not being your first time viewing. Because sometimes you just want to watch Star Wars movies you like, and that's okay. I will also specify that this one could have major ramifications if watching with a child, because they will have a strong attachment to whichever film is on the moment they become conscious of their surroundings, possibly leading to an obsession with the Phantom Menace ship and character designs, and a staunch defense that it's the best prequel. Moving on, timeline order I firmly believe is a second watch through or later only, purely because of George's insistence of spoiling major plot points of the original trilogy in the prequels. I think it's an important way to watch the series, allowing yourself to better understand the history of the galaxy as a whole. That being said, if you truly want to learn about the galaxy, we have only touched the tentacles of this Sarlacc pit. What we've been talking about up until now is known as the Skywalker Saga, plus Solo and Rogue One. That is a little over 10% of all canonical Star Wars media. The other 90% is built up on multiple series, each with its own characters and arcs set in the universe. Now that's a lot of content, so what I'm going to do is go through the series in the order I think you should watch them in. I'll point out where the series relate to each other, which is the main reason behind my watch order, but I'll also point out series that work as standalone projects that don't need information about the galaxy besides the movies. After I've explained the why of the order, I'll then place them in the where on the timeline. So if you wanted to, I don't know, watch the entire franchise in full chronological order with the series included, you could have a reference to do that. To start off, I have to admit to a minor fib. There are technically 12 theatrical films in the franchise. The reason I said 11 was because the 12th is Star Wars The Clone Wars and looks like this. This is where you'll start the series because it's the beginning of the Clone Wars TV show, which introduces to a lot of characters important to the universe, but unseen in the films. Now, for your own sake, I'm not going to tell you to watch every single episode of the show. It's filled with strange additions to the universe, such as zombie infections, alien body snatchers, Godzilla, Spider-Man, Senate bureaucracy, filler episodes, and a jumping timeline. Like, seriously, there's an entire website dedicated to straightening out the chronological order of this series. What I am going to suggest is start with one arc per season, and if you get interested in a certain character plotline, follow them. Going through the series and thinking about its bare essentials made me realize that the story of the Clone Wars isn't about the clones or the war at all. It really is about the return of Maul and the destruction of Mandalore, both of which are neutral in the war. So really, it shouldn't be called Clone Wars, it should be called George Lucas lets Dave Filoni test out his sequel trilogy ideas before committing to it. To get the story of the Clone Wars, you'd go Season 2's Mandalore, Season 3's Witches and Monsters, Season 4's Return of Maul, which technically ends with the Season 5 premiere, Season 5's Shadow Collective and Rogue Jedi, which we can do since we skipped Season 1 entirely, Season 6's Protocol 66, and end with Season 7 Siege of Mandalore. Those arcs will allow you to get the major story of the Clone Wars while still ignoring major plot threads and essential characters that come up later in the series. Possible add-ons I would suggest is Season 1's Forum arc, so you can meet the best character in all of Star Wars,
the Brigand Hondo Anaka.
If you really liked Ahsoka, I'd go with Season 2's Geonosis arc, Season 3's Mandalore arc, the Mortis Gods, and Padme Search for Peace, and Season 5's Andor plot, better known as Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka pull a CIA and train terrorists for their benefit. However, if you've heard that Clone Wars is actually a dark and gritty, not made for kids story of clones toughing it out over the worst battle of their lives, and feel like that was missed in the segments I presented you so far, I would suggest following the Domino Squad in the Camino, Citadel, Umbara, 66, and Bad Batch arcs. Any other episode you watch is for your own enjoyment, but those are the essential Clone Wars stories that give context for the rest of the series. For timeline placement, both the movie and show are set between episodes 2 and 3, referring to this website to get a more direct timeline. If you want to have a stronger impact out of the finale than you already get, I recommend watching Siege of Mandalore after episode 3, and if that doesn't cut it, several people have spliced the finale alongside Revenge of the Sith into a glorious 4-hour supercut for maximum timeline continuity. After the Clone Wars, I have a diverging path. If you watch the Bad Batch episodes and enjoyed the characters, or want to see the immediate aftermath of Revenge of the Sith on a greater scale, I would suggest going with the Bad Batch show. It's 3 seasons following Batch as they gain a new member and realize that they and many other clones are not important to the Empire, slowly being replaced by conscripted troops loyal to the Empire, not the Republic they once defended. Additionally, the series has an overarching plot following Dr. Hemlock and his research on his cloning technology, learning the secrets the Kaminoans kept to themselves. Overall, The Bad Batch is an enjoyable series that feels very familiar to the Clone Wars, both in its story focusing on the livelihoods of people fabricated only to wage war, and in its handling of certain plot lines to help explain away its plot points that the films didn't care or think about. And if any of you try to say that Bad Batch's inclusion of the Emperor's fascination with cloning is not the same or worse than the retcon of the biochips in every clone's head, that's your nostalgia glasses talking. Take them off and accept that Star Wars is a series that is constantly trying to dig itself out of the holes it has put itself in since the first movie. The Bad Batch immediately follows Revenge of the Sith, so you'll watch it then. If, however, you prefer the overall plot of the Clone Wars and Ahsoka, or want to see the same vibe but with a more original trilogy feeling, you can go with Star Wars Rebels. Based on Ralph McQuarrie's concept art, the show follows a group of rebels working together to fight and reclaim their home from the Empire. Throughout the show, we get to see the conflicts that come from a small group of people trying to do good, having to grow and adapt into a functioning organization, and working to overthrow an authoritarian regime. Add in the embracing love of a found family and new villains that follow the rule of cool and not gravity, and you have my second favorite show. I have so much to say about this show and how it has impacted Star Wars post-acquisition. I could probably do a whole other video on it. Suffice to say, after playing it safe for the first first season, it was able to both introduce new concepts and bring in ideas and characters from Legends to show that Star Wars, while going in a direction away from Lucas, still respects him and the legends that came before. It also introduced the jaded older mentor adopts baby Force Bean, which is Star Wars' new bread and butter. It also continues the story of the Clone Wars, continuing Maul's search for revenge, Ahsoka's insistence on denying her past, and Mandalore's fight to find its place in the galaxy. Not to mention the return of the greatest Star Wars character in history.
I am Hondo Onaka.
In the timeline, it takes place 5 years and before, leading up to the events of New Hope. Being honest, if you don't feel like working through 7 seasons of Clone Wars, I think Rebels is just as fun a starting point as any. It introduces you to important characters and actually sets up the major events coming to Star Wars soon. The Mandalorian is an awkward show. You could watch Season 1 without anything else and thoroughly enjoy it, like many people did when it came out. Set 5 years after Return of the Jedi, it's a rogue bounty hunter who takes a Yoda-like being under his protection, with the stylings of old ideas in the universe and even older inspirations of Western and samurai films that George Lucas was also inspired by. When it first came out, it was a breath of fresh air. In between the highly criticized sequels and just after the negatively reviewed Solo, this original story followed a character we'd never met before to worlds we'd never seen, and it invigorated so much life into Star Wars. And then Season 2 came along and just didn't do that. While you can watch Season 1 solo and just be fine, Season 2 and beyond definitely require some viewing of Rebels. The second season feels like every episode is reintroducing a character we'd seen before, causing the universe to shrink. There are a couple of episodes that feel like the first, but personally, a lot of magic was lost as soon as we saw those familiar faces. It was still fun, but it wasn't the same. From there, this section of the universe expanded into a collection of media people are calling the Mandoverse, because everything nowadays is either categorized as eras for girls or verses for boys. The proper order to watch Mandoverse is in release order with The Mandalorian Seasons 1 and 2, then The Book of Boba Fett, which has some really cool pieces of lore, but struggles in the third act, and the writers really wanting to work on The Mandalorian Season 3 instead, which you then get to watch, ending with The Ashoka Show for now, which is basically a sequel series to Rebels, hence why I think anything past Mandalorian Season 1 needs a Rebels preface. Technically, this Mandoverse is not done, with the next theatrical Star Wars film being The Mandalorian and Grogu, and the second season of Ahsoka seemingly closing out this verse of interconnected Star Wars, but if it turns out there are 3 more TV shows after that continue the story all the way to Starfighter, my bad. All the shows I've talked about up until now follow a continuous sub-story in the greater story of Star Wars, like a series spanning B-plot, or a turducken. All of these series bleed into each other, and there's a kind of order that you need to watch them in. There's also series that don't do that, and can really be watched in whatever order you choose, going with whatever interests you most. For these, I'm going to go in alphabetical order and explain what they're about, what I like about them, and where they go in the timeline. Have you watched any of the stuff I've mentioned here and thought it was a little too child-friendly? The rate at which good guys escape and take down the enemies with cute, marketable characters is just too high. What if your favorite movie is not one of the space operas, but the dingy Cold War film that shows the devastation that comes with fighting against the galaxy-spanning fascist empire? What if you wanted to see the radicalization of normal people into extremists, forced by their oppressors, not because they want to do it, but because they have to? Because they are being pushed down in every part of their life, and they can only take so much before it's either kill or be killed. Andor is a premium channel series for a children's movie franchise. It takes characters that have been seen as cannon fodder and turns them either into the most vile people ever to roam the galaxy, or gives them such emotional breadth that their deaths become much more depressing. And that's coming from me, who thinks this is one of the saddest scenes in the franchise. This show is one of, if not the best, pieces of the entire franchise. With some of the best acting and award-winning writing, I could almost suggest watching Andor and nothing else if you have an aversion to watching Star Wars as a whole. I say almost because for Andor to have a full story, it requires you to watch Rogue One after, which then leads you to watch A New Hope, which then spirals into what I am doing now. As for placement, Andor occurs in the same 5-year interval as Rebels. I would suggest watching it after Rebels because of its immediate push into Rogue One. If there's anything you can take away from this video, I hope it's to watch Andor and let it impact you as it has so many people. If you really enjoyed the prequels, the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan in it, and are completely fine with the retcons they did with the original trilogy and are cool with more, Obi-Wan Kenobi has what you want. Taking place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan is recruited to rescue Leia from being kidnapped, only to be confronted with the Inquisitors and his former Padawan Darth Vader. I'll be honest, I didn't care for this series, mostly because of its altering of canon. What I enjoyed was the interactions we got between Obi-Wan and Leia, showing how much he cares for her despite being on the outside of her life, just like Luke. I also like the internal politics of the Inquisitors and how the dark side hurts them because they are unwilling to work with each other in order to get that leg up, and getting to see all the original actors reprise their roles was also enjoyable. Like I said, it takes place 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, which is the same year as Solo, so enjoy your realization that this is one of 2 characters Harrison Ford plays in a Lucasfilm production that gives him a wild age gap love interest. If only there was a meme for this. Oh wait, here we go. Next in this section is Skeleton Crew. The best way I can describe this is an 80s Amblin entertainment film like The Goonies or E.T., set in the Star Wars universe. It's basically what everyone says about it because it's a great pitch for the series, and connects to nothing, and follows 4 kids that encounter pirates, search for treasure, and find their way home. The only connective tissue to the rest of the saga is its use of visual design. If they didn't say the word Jedi, I wouldn't blame you for not realizing it's a Star Wars series, or maybe even seeing it as the Captain EO spinoff, which it kind of is. It's a lot of fun, the kids play off each other really well, and it allows a peek into a part of the galaxy we see extremely rarely in every other piece of media. The only thing you need to remember is that it takes place after Return of the Jedi, and Neil is to be cherished at every moment. Next up is The Acolyte, which is currently the lowest rated piece of Star Wars media on IMDb. Set 100 years before The Phantom Menace and the High Republic, it's an interesting season that dives into the conflict with the Jedi being both an insulated community that doesn't like input from outsiders and a galaxy-spanning peacekeeping organization. Following the mystery of a figure-killing Jedi, former Padawan Osha helps her old master unravel the secrets of this new threat, as well as the unanswered question of her family's death. This show has great fight sequences and a decent enough mystery, but with an inconclusive ending that will probably never get an official finale, it leaves more to be desired. I haven't seen Squid Game, but watching Lee Jung-jae in the series made me somewhat interested in it. I just wish we got a proper conclusion to the story the series was trying to tell, rather than it getting cancelled over Star Wars fans who hate Star Wars. Finally, in this section we have the Tales of miniseries. These are 15-minute episodes Lucasfilm has released for the past few May the 4th that glimpse at characters, revealing important pieces of lore, backstories, and their journeys beyond where we left them. If you want to learn more about Count Dooku, Barriss Offee, Morgan Elsbeth, Asajj Ventress, or Cad Bane, or want to see the hour of Ahsoka's life we haven't seen yet, feel free to watch their stories, which stretch from before Episode 1 to after Revenge of the Sith. This leads to the final 2 pieces of Star Wars media, which I must confess I haven't seen. Resistance is about a cell of the Resistance fighting against the First Order during the sequels, which I just never have gotten into, partially because of its art style, and The Young Jedi Adventures is a Disney Junior show. A Disney Junior show with the 4th longest runtime of any piece of Star Wars media. It's the earliest in the timeline we've gone, and there might be something important to the lore in there I'm missing, but it's also a Disney Junior show, so watch it at your own risk. That is all of the canonical Star Wars media that exists in timeline order. So the truest of Star Wars fans only have to spend 14,827 minutes to watch all of Star Wars. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it's only 247 hours. Which still sounds like a lot, but if you meticulously organize them to fit in 2.5-hour slots like this, you can get through all of it in only 110 days. Okay, so it is a lot, and that's not including any of the books or comics or video games either, so you're looking at a year of Star Wars to understand it all. But the point of this video isn't to understand Star Wars, it's to find the best way to watch it. This seems like way too much to actually be the best. By the time you finish this, you'd probably just hate Star Wars. It was able to both introduce new concepts and bring in ideas and characters from legends, even to show in Star Wars of Western going samurai film with Endor for the series, mostly because of its legends was trying to tell, rather than it getting cancelled over Star Wars fans who hate Star Wars. I guess then you'd be a real Star Wars fan. Wait a minute! If you've been in the fandom long enough, it's a known fact that real Star Wars fans hate Star Wars. Obviously, the best way to watch Star Wars would be the one that real Star Wars fans actually enjoy watching, and with all the stuff they've changed and altered over the years, it's gotten farther and farther from its roots and what makes Star Wars good. So let's take a look at the timeline we have and see what we can carve out. We can get rid of Young Jedi Adventures and The Acolyte because they take place hundreds of years before any of the movies, which is too far to have any big consequences on the universe as a whole. Yoda, Darth Plagueis, we see and hear about him in the prequels. That's all the context we really need. We can also get rid of the Tales of miniseries. They just are way too spread out and unfocused to really help with the good viewing experience. On top of that, Star Wars really only is about the rise and fall of the Empire, so anything that happens after that is just extra bloat that takes away from the true message of Star Wars. Who cares what happens 30 plus years after the Empire falls? It shouldn't be important. The bad guys died. We can take away the sequels, and you know what? Even 5 years after the fall is too far away. Mandoverse, be gone with your marketable plushie. We've now gotten rid of a third of all media, and it already feels less cramped. We no longer have to worry about the unnecessary stuff that takes place so far away. We just have a full story of how the Empire rose to power, oppressed its citizens, and crumbled due to its hubris. But this is still 156 hours of Star Wars. But it wasn't always like that. The pivotal point at which Star Wars grew to be so big was when George Lucas sold Lucasfilm, and by extension Star Wars, to Disney in 2012. Afterward, the amount of canonical Star Wars media grew 70%. Cutting out all of that, we're left with 7 movies and 6 seasons, which feels more reasonable. However, if we're only going to rely on the media of this time, we need to rely on the canon of the time. In the early 2000s, when the Clone Wars originally aired, there was a lot of fighting when it came to what was officially canon to the Star Wars universe. Because of this, LucasArts tester and future senior creative executive at Lucasfilm, Leland Shee, created an in-house database known as the Holocron and created 6 levels of canon to the Star Wars universe. The main 3 we want to focus on are G-canon, the pieces of media George Lucas was heavily involved in, consisting of the 6 theatrical films, T-canon, or TV canon, mainly housing the Clone Wars show, and D-canon, a level of non-canon that consisted of the Star Wars Detours miniseries. With that canon now in place, it seems like several pieces have slipped through the cracks and lost their place in canon. Haven't they, Leland? I can understand decanonizing Tartakovsky's Clone Wars and the Droid series because they contradict the official canon of where the characters are at specific times, but there are more than a few fuzzy faces that deserve their respect in the canon placement. After the release of Return of the Jedi, Ewoks became so popular that they actually spun off into a mini-universe of their own. Beginning with the 1984 film Caravan of Courage, Wicket, Logray, and Chief Chirpa are reintroduced as they journey with 2 children who crashed on the moon to save their parents from a creature known as the Gorax. The Battle of Endor follows that up by having the youngest child team up with the Ewoks to fight a sorceress who takes the power supply of the family's ship. Additionally, the Ewoks got a 2-season series that was a prequel to their interaction with any humans while living on the Forest Moon, which basically makes them a pre-merger Andor Rogue One type thing. For some reason, however, the canon ratings left these out of the equations when, by its own system, it should be placed in T right next to the Clone Wars. Not to mention Star Wars Holiday Special, which introduced canon characters to the universe and is still referenced in Star Wars canon to this day. She has labeled it as S-canon or something that contradicts something in the higher canon, but I don't know what that contradiction is. There's nothing in canon that gets in the way of Chewbacca wanting to go home and celebrate Life Day with his family. I know the real reason is because these pieces are considered bad or cheaply made or a cash grab, but so is the first season and movie of the Clone Wars. Should we scrap that too? You know, those prequels are highly panned when they are released, not to mention all the stuff they retconned from the original trilogy. Why are some retcons allowed while the others are banished to the depths of... Wait, no, I already used the Sarlacc analogy. The deep space worm? Let's just take out all the controversial stuff, because the less controversy there is, the better viewing experience. Factoring out all of the media that held controversy in it leads us to 2 movies. We don't even get the end of a trilogy now because Lucas had to bunch his story into one film before being allowed to expand it again, and then he reused his final plot of blowing up a Death Star. People called him repetitive. Which it is, but it was his vision. At this point, do we not even include The Empire Strikes Back? Is the best order to watch Star Wars just Star Wars, and then you're done? It feels cheap, but maybe there's another way to watch it from a certain point of view. We start with the foreword from Chapter 4 of Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, giving us our title crawl. From there, we watch the Hidden Fortress and a couple of inserts, such as Once Upon a Time in the West's Frank intro and the bar scene, which should be intercut with this shot from Yojimbo. And when it's all done, watch the final act of the Dam Busters to blow up the Death Star. Is it a little complicated? Sure. Are there pieces that are missing? Of course. But really, what film isn't missing at least something? This viewing gives you all of what Star Wars has to offer without the cohesion, character names, or stylings at all. All George Lucas really did was put them together. All we need is for someone else to do it, and then it'll be the perfect viewing for a true Star Wars fan. What do you mean there are no cool aliens? I hope you all enjoyed this and hopefully learned something from it. If you did like it, feel free to like and subscribe. There's also this new hype feature, which I'm not sure what it actually does, but if you want to try it on my video, that'd be great. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you next time.